Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Friday Night Drive Western Suburbs podcast. I'm Josh Welge, joined here on a rainy Tuesday afternoon by Joel Boenitz. Joel, how you doing today? I'm really hoping that the rain gets out of here before the weekend.
Yeah, definitely. I was actually spending most of the weekend down in St. Charles, Missouri, where I've, grown up for most of my life, and it was filled with rain the entire time. So I'm also very much done with this weather and just hoping that it goes away before this weekend starts.
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to one of the coaches earlier today, and I said, I felt like for a month and a half we didn't get any rain at all, and now they're just dumping it all on us. So we'll see what happens. It's that time of year you're going to get that, but anyway, we're here to talk football and saw some great games last week. You and I were at a couple, and got another good one in this weekend. A lot of great games to look forward to, but we'll start to the games that we saw last weekend and start with the game that you were at, Joel, and Pavia. Boy, they really brought their offense. What do you say out of those guys? It looks like they had everything going for them offensively.
They really did. 47 points in just a half a play against Collinsville, and it looked like everything was just going their way. And, great field position throughout the entire game whenever they got on the offense, plus also the defense pretty much stymieing Collinsville's offense throughout the entire time. Just led to the recipe for success for for the Batavia team. And, it looks like they are fully ready for these playoffs. And, they showed that no matter who they're going to face, they're going to give their all. The backfield duo of Nathan Whitwell and Grayson Kelly, really showed up in that game. They ended up rolling out two different quarterbacks during their game. They had Bodie Anderson, who's been starting for them pretty much all season. And then they also put in Michael Vander Lutgarden, who's a sophomore who saw some time against Glenbard North. They put him in as well. Both of them combined for 4 passing touchdowns. Like I mentioned, the defense, I think they limited them to, I want to say, like 40 yards of offense when they faced or when they played in the first half. So it was just overall a very dominating victory for Batavia, and it looks like they're ready to make another deep playoff run this year.
Yeah, I mean, one game, and obviously that was a blowout where everything was going offensively, but it really sounds like it's a little bit more the Batavia that I'm a little bit familiar with offensively, from the standpoint that obviously Nathan Whitwell is their guy that they go to, but getting other guys involved like Grayson Kelly, Isaiah Brown is a really talented receiver. Being able to unlock him and get him the ball and let him do what he does, he's a really good receiver for them. So, a really good sign for them going forward that they're able to do kind of that. And again, I think I said last week, I mean, I don't bet against Batavia ever. And definitely not this time of year, because they've proven that when, they can really get going come playoff time. So really good first round 7A win for them in the 7A bracket. Another team in the 7A bracket that I got to see on Friday night, equally impressive, was Downers Grove North. They handled Wheaton Warrenville South pretty handily. Final score was 34-7. One of the stories in that game, Downers Grove North's junior quarterback Owen Lansu, really impressive. I mean, he looked every bit like one of the best quarterbacks in the state. 18 of 21 passing, 3 incompletions, and one of them was a drop. And just a kid that, really fast release, very accurate. I mean, takes what the defense gave him. They were giving him a lot of the short stuff. He took it, and they just kind of marched down the field. Really impressive. Just a kid that's just got all the physical tools and all the mental tools also as well, just kind of mature beyond his years. And then they got a great defense on top of it. They gave up a touchdown to Wheaton Warrenville South on Wheaton's first drive. But they shut him out after that. They forced a couple of turnovers. Joe Edwards, a really good defensive lineman, had a couple sacks for them. So similar to Batavia, they looked like a team that is poised for a deep playoff run. So very impressive first round win for Downers Grove North. Those are two programs that have had some success lately. A program that it's been a while in the playoffs, but they got a good win for them last week. Burlington Central. What do you think about them? I mean, first playoff win in, was it 18 years?
Yeah, first win in 18 years and first home playoff win also since 2006. just a really controlling victory over Grant, 42-14. It looked like if they had been, you know, they didn't look like it was their first playoff game in 18 years. Let's just say that. I mean, it was just a very dominant performance. Jackson Alcorn had 4 touchdowns in the game. We kind of mentioned it a couple of weeks ago when they got their win over Prairie Ridge. Alcorn's one of the best quarterbacks in the league that nobody's talking about. And, he's proved time and time again since that game that, he deserves to be talked about and deserves to be up in that conversation as one of the best, quarterbacks in the area. And he proved it once again in their first playoff game. And, it's really shown how much Burlington Central has grown over these past couple of years where they finished 4-5 and just missed out on the playoffs. It's shown how much, they've grown as a program. And, it's a really good sign for them, especially with a tough matchup in the second round. So, it's going to be really interesting to see how they face off against a Duquesne Conference opponent. And yeah, no, it's going to be really exciting to see. They showed some great stuff in their week 1 victory, or in their not week 1, their week 10 victory, dare say.
round one, week 10.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, really good win for Burlington Central. They're really on a nice roll lately with some good wins for them. One of the storylines for me in the first round of the playoffs, the West Suburban Conference as a whole, tremendous job. I mean, Downers Grove North, as I mentioned before, no surprise there. Lyons Township stays undefeated, no surprise there. But there are some other wins in there that, maybe if not surprising, they were pretty impressive. York playing Edwardsville. I was talking to a friend of mine from downstate by Edwardsville during the week, and he said, Edwardsville, he felt that he had one of the best defense in the state and probably the number one player in the state. And I kind of texted him during the game. I'm like, what happened to that elite defense? York scored 37 points on him. Bruno Massel, their senior quarterback, ran for 172 yards, 11 for 11 passing, and York put up 37 points on, again, what I was led to believe was an elite Edwardsville defense. I mean, that was a pretty impressive win for York last Friday.
Yeah, definitely. Shout out to Billy for being the Edwardsville friend. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, I mean, obviously, a couple of weeks ago, they held East St. Louis to just 14 points in their matchup against them. And, I was really interested to see how York was going to face off against a team like that. But I mean, as you mentioned, York planned for that game extremely well to get those 37 points. And, I thought it was going to be a really close matchup, but they proved me wrong. They proved you wrong. They proved Billy wrong. It was just a really fun. It was just a really fun game to kind of just track throughout during my game. And yeah, no, it's really interesting to see how this York team is going to match up later on in the playoffs when they face even more tough teams in the future.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I'll be the first one to admit I was wrong about that one. I bought into the Edwardsville Kool-Aid and really kind of doubted York. They had a couple of late season losses that kind of made me wonder, but that was a very impressive win for the Dukes. Equally impressive and equally surprising, Willowbrook going on the road to Hononegah. Hononegah is a program from the Rockford area. They only had 1 loss during the regular season, and they actually had 0 losses on the field because they took a forfeit loss for an ineligible player earlier in the year, but they're undefeated other than that. Willowbrook goes on the road and gets a win. Now, very impressive. I mean, Willowbrook is a team that outside of the West Suburban Gold this year, they really kind of struggled earlier in the year. So I kind of wondered how they would do when they get out of the league. But man, I will say that Willowbrook, they've been a team that consistently, they've got to the playoffs every year for the last decade or so. And when they get to the playoffs, they usually do something in the playoffs. I mean, they've been to the quarterfinals routinely the last several years. They got to the semifinals in 2019, I believe. So they do it again. I mean, shout out to Nick Hildreth and Willowbrook, a really good win, beating Hononegah last week. And shout out to their other West Suburban Gold, rival, I guess, so to speak, Downers Grove South. First playoff win since, I believe, 2011, winning a back and forth game over Plainfield South. A really good win for Downers Grove South.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, both of those programs, I mean, they didn't have the best start of the season. I think both of them entered West Suburban Gold play at 1-2. And, they both played really well throughout conference play, and they showed how good they were when it comes to the playoffs. And I mean, you mentioned Willowbrook always performing well in the playoffs. I mean, they've won they won 5 straight heading into the playoffs, and they just use that momentum to pull them forward. And same for Downshore South. I mean, 6 straight victories to end the season. And then that big win against Plainfield South to get their first playoff victory. I mean, both of these teams are rolling throughout the playoffs, and it's going to be interesting how they're going to move that momentum through to the next round.
Yeah, no doubt. Both of them have very difficult round 2 games. Willowbrook hosts St. Rita on Friday night. Downers Grove South goes on the road to Lyons Township, also on Friday night. There's a lot of Saturday games, but those are 2 of the Friday ones. So kind of looking forward to that. Any other first round games or first round wins that kind of struck you before we go on to round 2?
I just wanted to talk about the number of school records that were broken at that St. Charles North game against Rolling Meadows.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there were 3 school records broken in that game. I mean, Ethan Plum threw for 7 touchdowns. That was a school record. Keaton Ranke, 210 receiving yards. That was a school record. And then Ranke also got over 1,000 receiving yards in the season. First receiver to ever do that at St. Charles North. And considering the amount of quality wide receivers that they've had in their program over the past couple of years, even including last year where they had 3 really talented ones, for him to be the first, that's a proving statement for how good Keaton Ranke has been this year. And, I think, they're kind of rolling heading throughout the playoffs. And, after that week 4 loss to Batavia, they've just kind of been rolling, and they proved how good of a team they are in that first round game against Robbie Gould and Rolling Meadows.
It seems like every week Ethan Plum is doing just crazy things, throwing the football. He just had a whale of a year for St. Charles North. And Keaton Ranke, I mean, you wrote about him this week in your King County notebook, a kid that I believe he didn't play too many games last year, but he's really come back gangbusters this year.
Yeah, I mean, he was out, or I believe he got injured in week 2, and he was out for a majority of the season before they played Bradley Bourbonnais in the first round last year, where they lost. And after that loss, he kind of said, he's like, "Hey, I'm kind of mad at how this season went. I need to prove myself next year," and he's definitely done that this season for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about that. A lot of great stuff in round 1, but let's get started. Let's get ahead to round 2, and a game I think both of you and I are going to be having our eye on Saturday night. Burlington Central going to Geneva. If I'm not mistaken, Matt Rodewald emailed it this week. It's the first time these programs have ever met.
Yep, that is correct.
That's something else. Those 2 programs are not separated by a whole lot of real estate. So, but boy, fun matchup. I mean, when you talk about starting with the quarterbacks with Jackson Alcorn for Burlington Central, Tony Chihino for Geneva, the receivers, I believe LJ Kerr for Boenitz Central, obviously Talon Taylor, and a whole crew of guys for Geneva. What are you looking at from that one?
I think it's just going to be a great battle of quarterbacks. I mean, you kind of mentioned it. I kind of mentioned earlier, Jackson Alcorn being, the quarterback that being the best quarterback that nobody's talking about. Tony Chihino is probably the best first-year quarterback that everybody got to know throughout the entire season. I mean, he's up to 39 passing touchdowns this season. Only 2 interceptions to go along with it. I mean, he has been extremely good. And, both of these quarterbacks, it's going to be a fire battle throughout the entire game. And it'll be which quarterback can outduel the other. And, I'm really interested to see how both of these teams match up. We talked about Burlington Central's win. Geneva bounced back from the week 9 loss to St. Charles North with a big 49-7 victory over Munson. I mean, Talon Taylor has had 5 3-touchdown games this season. I have not seen any of them, so oops. No, it's both these teams are extremely good. They're one of the big teams that we've been talking about all season long, and it's a matchup that I'm really excited to kind of walk along with from where I'm going to be at Saturday night, and I'm really excited to see how the game turns out.
Yeah, it should be fun. I mean, obviously Geneva, they bring that Duquesne Conference pedigree. They've had a great year from there. But man, I mean, Burlington Central, they come from a conference that's no slouch itself in the Fox Fight Conference. They got that really good win over Prairie Ridge a few weeks ago. The game that Jackson Alcorn threw for like 400 yards and 6 touchdowns, something crazy like that. So, again, I've been wrong before, but I do believe there will be points scored Saturday night in Geneva. Game that I'm going to be at on Saturday afternoon at 1:00. Really looking forward to this one. Byron playing at Montini. This is a rematch of last year's Class 3A state semifinal. Byron won that game, I believe, 26-21. They went on to win the Class 3A state championship. That was their toughest game along the way, the whole way. And it's a game that Montini, they've had that game circled on their calendar pretty much ever since that loss. Game's going to be at Montini, so we'll see if that makes a difference or not. But really curious. Montini's been on quite a roll playing at CCL ESCC. Their sophomore quarterback, Izzy Abrams, since he's taken over. I said it last week on a podcast. I mean, their offense has really taken off since he's been the quarterback for them. Kind of a dual threat dimension. But man, on the other side, Byron. What they do, they just do so well. And they had that really tough week 8 game with Dixon where they were able to survive that. They got Caden Constantine, who's a really talented fullback and middle linebacker. He was hurt for at least a portion this year. He's back now. So that's a game that, you hate to say it's a Class 3A state championship because it's only the second round, but it's going to be one of the games that's going to decide a Class 3A state championship. Of that I do know. So, again, really looking forward to that one.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a fun matchup, especially for second round of the playoffs. And, you mentioned it. Yeah. Both teams have been really good throughout, the entire season. I mean, Byron is once again undefeated heading into the playoffs. It's their third time in 4 years where that has happened. And, Montini has pulled off some pretty impressive wins, especially down the stretch. And, it's going to be really exciting to see how these two teams match up. And yeah, once again, I'm going to make the prediction. Points will be scored in that game.
Yeah, I think points are going to be scored in that game. I mean, I'd be curious to see how many points, because Byron can really score, but they're not like a quick strike type score type offense. They're a wing tee. If it needs to be 10 plays, if it needs to be 12 plays, if it needs to be 21 plays, they will score eventually. It's just, they don't mind doing a 3rd and 3, 4th and 1 type thing. So, I'm interested to, see how many possessions there are in that game, because they can play those long drives. But it should be fun. I'm definitely looking forward to that. Haven't got a chance to see Montini yet. Really looking forward to seeing them. Have not seen Byron this year. Obviously, they're a little bit of drive from Rockford, but yeah, then should be a lot of fun on Saturday afternoon. Another Saturday afternoon game that you're going to be at. St. Charles North going to Mount Carmel. Man, 2 pretty good quarterbacks in that game with Ethan Plum and Mount Carmel's quarterback that's going to Vanderbilt, Jack Elliott. A little bit of a history there too. I mean, St. Charles North, when they went to state a few years ago, they needed to beat Mount Carmel along the way. They did beat them. I remember Tyler Newman basically put St. Charles North on his back, and they were able to beat them in a very memorable semifinal game, I believe. But man, really, really curious to see that one. Obviously, Mount Carmel is in 7A, one of the teams that, all right, if you're going to get to where you want to go, you got to go through these guys.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, when on the day of the seating selection show, I was actually covering St. Charles North boys soccer that day at the regional final. And I got approached by a couple of St. Charles North fans and their athletic director, Joe Benoit, and they were asking me, it's like, hey, do you have any idea what the seating is going to be? Anything like that? And I literally just told them, I'm like, hey, Steve Susie probably has it the most accurate right now because I have no idea besides that. And as soon as I told them that, their faces dropped. And they're like, you're telling me we're going to have to face Mount Carmel in round 2? And I'm like, unfortunately, I'm pretty sure that's the case. So they've been dreading this matchup, but I don't see why. I think this is going to be a really great game. I mean, St. Charles North, I kind of mentioned it before, they've been really good since their week 4 loss to Batavia. And when I talked to Keaton Rinke this weekend, he was talking about how important the prep is going to be for this game. It's got to be the best that they have ever had. And, he was talking about the prep that they did for Geneva in week 9 and how well panned out, and he's like, we got to do that again, but even better this time. And I'm really excited to see how this team faces off against Mount Carmel. I mean, you mentioned it. Jack Elliott has been really good throughout this entire season. They've had a couple of bad losses this year, especially to Loyola back in week 9. But I think it's going to be a really good game either way. And I'm just really excited to see how both these teams, play. And I think this is going to be another game that may decide who potentially wins Class 7A. So,
yeah, I mean, that Loyola game for Mount Carmel was sort of the outlier for them in that Jack Elliott was healthy for that game and didn't score a ton of points. I mean, even in the games where I think they've only lost 2 games where Jack Elliott's been healthy, and one of them was to that Hun school from New Jersey in week 1. Even in that game, Mount Carmel put up a ton of points. They put up a ton of points against Nazareth when they beat them. So again, in a prediction that's sure to go wrong, I think there'll be a lot of points scored Saturday in Charles North playing Mount Carmel, because 2 really talented offenses. Earlier in the day on Saturday afternoon, game that I'm really interested to see. I'm not going to be there, but I'm interested to see what happens. Fenwick playing at Downers Grove North. Again, another 7-A game. I'm interested in from the standpoint of Downers Grove North's offense looks really good right now with Owen Lansu playing quarterback for them. Scott's a lot of good receivers, really balanced attack, but that Fenwick defense is pretty tough. I mean, I believe they held Brother Rice to just 7 points. Obviously, the headliner for Fenwick is Nate Marshall, defensive lineman going to Auburn. One of the best defensive linemen, not only in the state, but in the country. They have a lot of different guys defensively. And Fenwick is just, I don't want to say quietly, but maybe a little bit under the radar, has just been a really solid team all year long. And that win over Brother Rice last week, that kind of opened my eyes a little bit that, maybe I need to pay a little bit more attention to Fenwick. But, obviously now they go to Downers Grove North. It should be a really fun game.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Fenwick has proven throughout the entire season that they can either score points or they can grind down opponents, especially in, the clutch time throughout, the final 6 minutes of a game. And they can grind out wins through their rushing game. And, they did it against Montini earlier in the year. Looks like they did it again against Brother Rice. So I'm really interested to see what approach they're going to take heading into this game. Are they going to try and rely on their defense to stop Owen Lansu and Downers Grove North? Or are they going to try and score as many points as they can in order to make sure that they can keep up with that offense? So it's going to be interesting what the game plan is going to be for that game, especially considering how talented Downers Grove North is on both sides of the ball. And yeah, I think it's going to be a really interesting game throughout just the entire match.
Yeah, another game this weekend involving a West Suburban Silver team. A game that I'm going to be on Friday night. York is going to be playing Oswego. Again, interesting one. I mean, York, they were able to really do a number on a good defense last week with Edwardsville. Well, guess what? They're going to get another really good defense this week going to Oswego. Oswego has only given up 70 points all year long. I think their first team defense has given up something crazy like 5 total touchdowns or something like that. They beat Wabanzi last week. I will say the notable in that game, they're really talented senior linebacker, Carson Cooney going to Iowa. He left that game late in the game, was told like an ankle injury, did not return. So I'm not sure about his status for this week. So that's something to keep an eye on. But again, it should be a fun game. I mean, both teams, they really like to run the football. They both like to play really good defense. And Oswego, I mean, they're undefeated, but I will say that I think this is definitely their toughest test since that Joliet Catholic win, where their notable win of the season that came in week 2. I don't think they've played a team that caliber since that time until this week. York, tough team, man. They can again run the football. Bruno Masso is a good dual threat quarterback. I think Oswego, their offense is going to need to, kind of show out a little bit more this week. I mean, I think Oswego's really leaned on that defense quite a bit this year. I think their offense is going to need to put up a few points because, it's going to be tough to ask them to shut out a team or hold them to 10 points, a team that just, dropped 37 points last week. So, but definitely a game that I'll be surprised if that one doesn't go down the wire.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, you mentioned it. Oswego has had a really good defensive showing throughout this entire year. But I mean, offensively, they have also shown that, they can play whenever it matters. I mean, that Manuka game a couple of weeks ago where they scored 42 points off of them that basically decided the conference. I mean, they've shown that they can put offense on the board, especially against talented teams, and they're going to definitely need to do it again against a York team that is riding high after their big win over Edwardsville. I mean, they're going to need to show it again in order to make sure that they can make it as far as they can in this 8A playoff. So once again, it's going to be really interesting to see if Oswego can live up to the challenge against York.
Yeah, fun to see a game like that where, I mean, they're two teams that I've seen both of them play, but they come from two different leagues. They don't see each other. I don't know when the last time those two programs played each other, maybe ever. I mean, they just don't run into each other. So it should be a lot of fun to watch. Any other games that you're kind of keeping an eye on this weekend that I kind of wonder what's going to happen with that one?
I'm keeping an eye on that Batavia Lincoln Way West game. I mean, obviously, Batavia did show that they have the good potential in their win against Collinsville, but they're going to need to do it again, especially against a tough Lincoln Way West team. And, they pulled up, or Lincoln Way West pulled up the upset victory last week over Pekin. And, they really showed out in that game. I believe the final score was like 34-10 or something like that, but they really pulled ahead early from the start. So, if Batavia wants to get a win in that game, they're going to need to pull out ahead early, just like they did against Collinsville. But, I'm really interested to see how the two teams match up this time around.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm curious on that one as well. And just throwing one more out. I mean, St. Francis playing Prairie Ridge. St. Francis looked great last week. Really steamrolling Sterling. But man, Prairie Ridge is a team that comes in with a lot of good playoff experience. They made some deep runs in the past. They come from that Fox Valley Conference. Is tough. They're going to want to run the football. St. Francis is going to want to run and pass the football quite a bit. So that's another one that I'm kind of like, wonder what's going to happen there. Two really good programs. A lot of great football this weekend. You're going to be out there on Saturday. I'm going to be out there on Friday and Saturday. Looking forward to it. Hopefully the rain kind of gets through the area and we move on. Just want to point out, people want to check out the other podcast that's out there right now, the South and West. With JT Peddledy and Eddie Carriffio. I'll be back here tomorrow with Steve Susie as we look ahead to some of the great games statewide, and looking forward to it. Right, Joel?
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be another week of playoff football, so it should be even more fun this time around.
No doubt about it. Well, anyway, for Joel Boenitz, this is Josh Welge. Everybody have a great Tuesday afternoon.